Your platform restricts speech.
Our platform promotes speech unless people violate our rules.
Our platform promotes speech unless people violate our rules. This is how a deranged murderer would play with a captive victim.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Okay. Mister, if you let me go, I won't press charges, I promise.
Now he places the lotion in the basket.
Please.
Put the lotion in the basket!
Our platform promotes speech unless people violate our rules.
We are all in an abusive relationship with social media.
Mr. Reagan.
Quick reminder to subscribe to my new channel, Toxic Masculinity, where I break down the news of the day every day. Link in the description below. Allow me to introduce you to Twitter's trust and safety czar, Vijaya Gadde. Vijaya Gadde is currently the most abusive person on the internet. It's possible that Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping might be worse than her, but throughout the world, she is a close third. She is the person who suspends accounts and bans everyone on Twitter. About a year ago, Joe Rogan had her on his show, as well as Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, and as a counterpoint, Tim Pool. So why am I doing a breakdown of this show now, a show that was filmed over a year ago? Well, because we've got a lot more context within which to analyze the statements of Jack Dorsey and of Vijaya. And in retrospect, it looks like almost everything that they've said on this show was a lie. They were just outright lying to Joe Rogan, they were lying to Tim Pool, and they were lying to the 5.6 million people who watched the show. A note on the Joe Rogan experience. Joe Rogan's shows are often excellent. I don't agree with him on every political issue, but he's an intelligent guy, and he has great people on his show, and he asks great questions, and I respect him, and I respect the show immensely. I don't think Joe Rogan ever set out to red pill anyone, but he does so daily, and that's because he's searching for truth. And despite that being one of the most noble pursuits there is, it's a rather unusual thing for people to do these days. So, look, I cannot wait to break down this episode, but first let me just say, I don't know if Jack Dorsey actually even controls his company at this point. Twitter has been so weaponized against conservatives that it seems to me that Dorsey may be getting his orders from someone else. Is it the FBI? Is it Pelosi? Is it China? I don't know. And look, it may just be Dorsey himself. He may be that warped that he thinks silencing conservatives is the right thing to do. But just keep that in mind. It may be Jack Dorsey or it may not be. Jack Dorsey might be controlled. Okay, honestly, I cannot wait to dive in. But unfortunately, first, I have to sell you something. The economy is way too uncertain. International relations are shaky, and there are new COVID-19 strains mutating super fast. You can't count on anyone but yourself. That's why many investors are deciding to buy gold and silver and keep it with them. It's the only way that they can feel secure. Noble Gold is your perfect choice, and you can have precious metals shipped right to your door. And here's a great place to start. This is a 4-set of American Eagle 22-karat gold coins, and it's the perfect investment. You know why? Because they're changing the design, and that means in less than a year, you'll be holding on to a rare and valuable collection. And all 4 of these, $5, $10, $25, and $50 coins are bullion-grade proofs, authenticated by the U.S. Mint. There are just 20 sets around, so it's first come, first served. There's also a mystery surprise extra coin as a holiday gift with each set. Discover more and call Noble Gold at 877-646-5347. That's Noble Gold at 877-646-5347. All right, now, without further ado, let's watch this woman, Vijaya, lie to America.
You know, we're coming towards a position where people think some ideas are better than others. Therefore, as a company, we're going to restrict access to certain information.
I think that the tough part of this is really, and love to have a discussion about this, is do you really want corporations to police what's true and not true?
Do you really want corporations to police what's true? That's such a bizarre statement coming from her. That's exactly what you do.
We try not to do that. We don't want to do that.
Yes, you do, and yes, you do. If you don't want to do it, you wouldn't do it.
But the places that we focus on is where we think that people are going to be harmed by this in a direct and tangible way.
You're going to be hearing this in particular a lot in her responses, but we'll get to that later.
The way I think of it is it's behavior based. And I know you think of it as content, and we can disagree on this point. But this is about, why are you doing this to a trans person? Why are you calling them by this name when they've chosen to go by a different name? Or why are you outing them in some way? Like, what is your intent and purpose behind that?
Okay, so this is why I actually wanted to play this segment. What is your intent? What is your purpose? The vast majority of the time, I would like to make clear, those two things are unknowable. Unless somebody outright says, I'm calling you Richard despite the fact that you want to be called Rachel specifically because I don't like you and I want to harm you. Unless somebody says something like that, you can't possibly know that that is their intent. If I call Rachel Richard, it's because I believe that Rachel is a man and that his name is Richard. And I'm specifically talking now about Rachel Levine, the new Assistant Secretary of Health, who's a man named Richard. This guy grew his hair out, put on a scarf and some lipstick, and now he calls himself Rachel. I do not believe that Richard is a woman. No matter how much lipstick this guy applies, I can't magically believe that he's a woman. I can't magically believe that I don't need air to breathe, that I'm bulletproof. I would love to believe those things, but I can't. I can't make myself. And honestly, I don't even want to believe that Richard Levine is a woman. I don't want to, okay? So there's that. And so when Twitter says that they're policing people's intent, what they're really doing is policing people's actions they don't like, and then making assumptions about their intent in order to justify the censorship that their policing results in.
Now, where we draw a line is when people use their voice and use their platform to abuse and harass other people to silence them.
That is exactly what you do. Unbelievable. Okay. Let's keep watching this woman lie.
If you look at free expression and free speech laws around the world, they're not absolute. They're not absolute. There's always limitations on what you can say, and it's when you're starting to endanger other people.
And that is the problem. You far too often make the decision that a Twitter user is endangering others when they are not endangering anyone. We'll get to examples of this later, so I'm not going to go over this in detail right now. But also, can I just say, this policy position that she is asserting that they primarily censor people when these people endanger others, this is an absolute and total lie. This is not merely a mischaracterization or a slight distortion or an exaggeration. This is a full-on lie. She knows it's a lie, and she's saying it merely to make Twitter look innocent. Okay, let's keep watching her lie.
When I was physically threatened on Twitter, you guys refused to take down the tweet. And I showed up in Berkeley and someone physically threatened me because they were encouraged to. When I was in Venezuela, I was physically threatened by a high-profile individual, 10,000 people tweeting at me, you guys do nothing, right? So I guess there's the obvious question of why does it always feel like your policies are going one direction politically?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Tim Pool. And the hilarious thing is that Tim is not even a conservative, but he's right. If anyone is targeted by the left, Twitter somehow magically doesn't notice. And what Tim's talking about here are threats that were reported. So it's not like she can pretend that, she couldn't do anything about it because she didn't know about it. If she didn't know, it's because she's ignoring the concerns of people on the right entirely, and she's exclusively reacting to the concerns of leftists. And you'll see this pattern emerge with her responses. If it's a high-profile conservative who is enduring harassment from leftists, she's never heard of it. But if it's a conservative who's flagged for violating their rules, even when they're not violating anything, well, she throws the book at them. Let's watch her lie some more.
You say it's about behavior. You said it several times already. But I've got tons of examples of that not being the case.
And you will always be able to find those examples.
Yeah, examples where you guys were alerted multiple times and did nothing. Like when Antifa doxed a bunch of law enforcement agents, some of the tweets were removed, but since September, this tweet is still live with a list of private phone numbers, addresses. The guy who threatened the lives of these kids in Covington and said, lock them in the school and burn it down, you did nothing. I mean, he got suspended, he had to take his tweets down. Was he banned for threatening the lives of kids? Absolutely not. He's a verified user. He's got something like 20,000 followers. And it was highlighted by numerous conservative media outlets saying, wow, it's screenshotted, it's being shared. I mean, you had a Disney producer saying a picture of a wood chipper with a body being thrown in it, saying that's what he wanted to happen.
But Tim, those accounts were actioned. They may not have been actioned the way you wanted them to, but the tweets were forced to be deleted, and the account took a penalty for that.
This is a lie, a bald-faced lie. The Disney wood chipper guy he's a producer, and his name is Jack Morrissey, right? He took down his own tweets because he realized that he was getting backlash publicly. He was afraid that he would lose his job. Twitter did not remove those tweets, okay? And by her response here, I doubt there was any consequence. I doubt she even knew about this. And let me just be clear here. I don't think action should have been taken against this guy. I don't think he should have been suspended or banned or anything. But Twitter does suspend people for stuff like this. They do ban people for stuff like this, but only if you're right-wing, only if you're a conservative. And that should not happen, ever. Sure, this tweet was ugly, but I doubt this guy genuinely wanted these kids murdered. But this is precisely the sort of thing that will get a conservative suspended or banned. But then it's completely ignored if a leftist posts it. The other guy Tim's talking about, the guy that called for the Covington boys to be killed, his tweets were far more egregious. That guy's name is DJ House Shoes. He's a white guy who grew up in Detroit and who thinks he's black.
What's good, y'all? Bang, bang.
Now, DJ House Shoes, he tweeted out a promise to put $1,000 into a crowd fund for anyone who would punch any of the Covington kids, quote, right in the effing mouth. He also wrote, as Tim mentioned, lock the kids in the school and burn that bitch to the ground. He also wrote, quote, if you're a true fan of Shoes, meaning himself, I want you to fire on any of those red hat bitches when you see them on sight. Fire on obviously means shoot with a gun. He also posted, quote, fire on MAGA cocksuckers on sight, end quote. Now, this guy still has his Twitter account. He's still verified. He still's got the blue check. I don't have the blue check. I'm not verified. Twitter doesn't recognize that I'm anybody at all. But this guy gets a blue check, DJ House Shoes. Give me a friggin' break. And this is not just targeted harassment. This is incitement to murder. And these tweets, this doesn't sound like a joke to me. I mean, maybe it is a joke, but there's no indication that it's a joke whatsoever in any of these tweets. And Vijaya is saying that these tweets were forced to be taken down, and that maybe the account may not have been actioned in the way that Tim wants it to have been actioned, but she assures us that these accounts were actioned. Well, that makes me feel so much better that she says that they were actioned. Of course, I don't believe her. I think she is totally lying because it's definitely not true with the Disney wood chipper guy. And I don't believe that the House Shoes guy was dealt with at all either. But even if he was, the point is not whether or not the account was quote unquote actioned, as she puts it. The point is that there is a double standard. Any prominent conservative who posted something like that would have been banned instantly. House Shoes, because he's a leftist, nothing happened. Maybe he was forced to delete the tweet. I don't know. I doubt it. I don't care. This is a perfect example of how Vijaya and how Twitter have no uniformly applied standards. And they really just have terms of service rules so that they can pretend to justify the targeted censorship of conservative ideas and their silencing, suspension, and banishment of conservative Twitter users. This House Shoes guy posted at least 4 tweets that call for the death or call for violence against people. My guess is that there have been many, many more. According to Vijaya, Twitter has a 3 strikes policy.
Right.
So it's kind of like, 3 strikes.
So-
sort of like baseball.
3 strikes. Well, House Shoes is guilty of at least 4 strikes. So why the hell is he still on the site? He's still got a damn blue check. The point is, Twitter is biased. She should just admit this. Is it so hard to tell the truth? But you know what? I'm not sure if she's capable of telling the truth. Let's hear more lies.
It's a big thing to kick someone off the platform, and I take that very, very seriously.
So
I want to make sure that when someone violates our rules, they understand what happened, and they're given an opportunity to, get back on the platform and change their behavior. And so in many of these cases, what happens is we will force someone to acknowledge that their tweet violated our rules, force them to delete that tweet before they can get back on the platform. And in many cases, if they do it again, we give them a timeout.
This woman is the ultimate Karen. The ultimate Karen is in charge of who gets to speak on Twitter and who doesn't. She's like the kind of person who berates everybody she sees in a store without a mask. And, it was funny. I'm sure if I said that to her face, if I accused her of this, and she'd be like, of course I do. Why wouldn't I? Wearing a mask is important. Or maybe not. Maybe she'd deny it. I don't know.
here we have someone with over 20,000 followers. He's verified numerous times, incites his followers to commit a crime against these kids. The action taken against him is delete the tweets, you get a suspension, you get a timeout. Then you have people like Alex Jones, who berated a CNN reporter, permanently banned. You get Milo Yiannopoulos, he was mean, permanently banned.
But that's your impression. That's not what happened.
Wow. What a condescending bitch.
Let's do this one at a time.
Yeah.
Let's start with Milo. So what was the details with Milo?
So Milo had a number of tweets that violated our rules going back to 2014. But I'm going to talk about the final three in this
Yes,
three-strike
please.
concept. He claimed to be a BuzzFeed reporter in his bio, and he's a verified account, so that is impersonation. I'm not sure why he did that. He did do that.
Well, BuzzFeed's a left-wing thing, so he was doing parody.
Potentially, but our parody rules are very specific that if you have an account that's is a parody account, you need to say that it is a parody account so you don't confuse people.
But everybody who knows Milo would know that he's not a BuzzFeed reporter.
But people who don't know Milo will look at that
Fair
verified
enough.
account
Right, I
and
see what you're
say,
saying. But
hey,
he wasn't verified after a while. You removed his verification.
because he violated our rules around verification.
So the verification was removed because of the BuzzFeed thing?
I believe so.
Okay.
I can confirm that, but I believe so.
So I've actually never heard of this BuzzFeed situation, but let's just say that she's telling the truth. Milo apparently wrote that he was a BuzzFeed reporter. Now, if he had done that, if he did that, it's obviously a joke. If I say I'm the Queen of England, will I be unverified for impersonating the Queen of England? More to the point, shouldn't Jill Biden be unverified for impersonating a doctor? Lots of people put silly things in their Twitter profile. They're not always intended to deceive. And if this is actually why you unverified Milo, this is obviously disingenuous. There's no way you genuinely believe that he was trying to deceive people. And if you're pretending that you do believe that, you're lying once again. If Milo posted that, it was a joke, and you know it. And this is a perfect example of weaponizing a rule to censor somebody merely because you don't like them or you don't agree with their politics. Lie to us more, Vajaya.
He also doxed someone. He posted private information about an individual. So that was the second one.
This is not true. Milo never doxed anyone. The doxing that Vajaya is talking about here is when Milo spoke about a trans guy who calls himself Justine Kramer. Now, first of all, this didn't even happen on Twitter. This happened at an event that Milo was speaking at. And he didn't dox this guy. He merely said the name Justine Kramer. And Justine, whose real name I don't even know, Justine accused Milo of doxing him. But here's the thing. In another part of the interview, Vajaya specifically says that Twitter doesn't consider releasing names to be doxing.
What did you guys do with Kathy Griffin when she was saying she wanted the names of those young kids wearing the MAGA hats at the Covington High School kids?
Yeah, that's a great example, Joe. So in that particular case, our doxing policy really focuses on posting private information, which we don't consider names to be private.
We don't consider names to be private. But then she banned Milo because Milo said somebody's name. And consider this, releasing the names of or calling for the names of the Covington boys, well, they're minors. I could imagine that would be considered doxing. But saying the name Justine Kramer, he's a grown man. Saying his name is not doxing by your own admission. So how that contributed to Milo's banning doesn't even make sense. You are totally inconsistent with your policies, lady. And you know what? You know it.
He tweeted to somebody else, if you were my child, I'd have dashed your head on a rock and tried again, which we viewed as a threat.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I'm seems like he's saying, like, your mom should have swallowed you. It's like, you know what I'm saying? He's like, you're a mistake. I don't
totally.
think that's a threat.
I understand why reasonable people would have different impressions of this.
No. Reasonable people would not have different impressions of this. Every reasonable person would have the same impression of this. No reasonable person would ever think that this was a threat. For you to propose that reasonable people would think that it's a threat, well, that's a total lie. And look at her when she says, I'm just going through and I'm telling you what they are.
I don't
totally.
think that's a threat.
I understand why reasonable people would have different impressions of this. I'm just going through and telling you what they are just so we can have all the facts on the table.
Right.
She totally knows that this is bullshit. When she says this, when she says, I'm just going through and I'm telling you what they are, she's totally trying to sidestep any criticism of this interpretation of Milo's tweet as a threat because she knows that it's bullshit. This woman is a real piece of work.
And then the last one, we found a bunch of things that he posted that we viewed as incitement of abuse against Leslie Jones. So there's a bunch of them, but the one that I like to look at, which really convinced me, is he posted 2 doctored tweets that were supposedly by Leslie Jones. They were fake tweets. The first one said, white people are getting on my nerves, like how can you call yourself human? And then the second one said, the goddamn slur for a Jewish person at Sony ain't paid me yet. Damn, Bix nude better pay up.
So this was just a fake tweet that someone had photoshopped. Two fake tweets.
And we know they were faked because we could still tell from the software that they were faked. You can't always tell.
So it is possible that he didn't know they were faked.
It's possible.
That someone sent it to him and he didn't do his due diligence and looking it up. And
it is possible, but it was pointed out to him that they were fake because...
And he left it on?
And not only did he leave it on, he said, "Don't tell me some mischievous internet rascal made them up!" ! So this in the context of a bunch of other things he was saying towards Leslie Jones on Twitter, I and my team felt that this was taken as a whole incitement of harassment against her.
Bullshit. There is so much wrong with this claim that it's hard to know where to start. She's saying that reposting a doctored image that somebody else made that you think is real, she claims that this violates Twitter terms of service. Now, this is a pretty unreasonable demand of people. I see posts all the time from leftists that lie about things that Trump has said. Trump never instructed anybody to drink bleach. Trump never said coronavirus is a hoax. Trump never said soldiers were suckers or losers. Trump never called all Mexicans rapists. I could go on and on and on and on. And these things are all easily verified. If Joe Biden has made all of these claims on Twitter, why were none of the tweets of his taken down? Why was Joe Biden's account never suspended? Now, I don't think anybody's account should be suspended for tweeting these things. If you libel someone, there are laws to deal with that. You can't know what Milo is thinking. This girl is claiming that she can read minds. She's claiming that she's looked into Milo's heart, and she knows that he knew those images from Leslie Jones's Twitter account were photoshopped. But she doesn't know that. In fact, she's leaving out some critical information here, which is that Leslie Jones has tweeted a number of borderline racist things in the past. She's tweeted, "Lord have mercy, white people shit." She's tweeted, "Wait a minute, is Solomon sitting by a white woman?" Misspelled. And then she tweeted the hashtag, "I'm going to F him up." She's also tweeted, "Okay, you white girls are starting to look alike like a motherfucker," accompanied by the hashtag, "ain't even trying to look different." She's also tweeted, "Okay, black Republicans, blank stare. Isn't that an oxymoron? Emphasis on moron," calling black Republicans morons. And that's just a taste of the many racial, some might even say racist, tweets by Leslie Jones. And so it's not completely inconceivable that Milo believed that the other tweets were also genuine Leslie Jones tweets. And that's the thing about reality. Sometimes it's hard to know what's really going on. We make mistakes here and there. There's no reason to believe whatsoever that Milo knew that the tweets he posted were fake. I'm sure he thought they were real. But you, Vijaya, you've determined through your magical mind reading that Milo knew they were fake and that he had to be stopped. But the statement that you just read, Milo's response to being alerted about the tweets being photoshopped, well, that clearly indicates that he fully believed the tweets were real.
Not only did he leave it on, he said, "Don't tell me some mischievous internet rascal made them up!" So
the reality is that Milo is a victim here. He's a victim of a hoax. Somebody created Photoshop tweets, and Milo believed that those tweets were real, and he reposted them. This happens literally every day on Twitter, maybe every second. If somebody buys an expensive counterfeit painting, a forgery, but they believe it to be real, are they punished? No, because they aren't the criminals. They are the victim, you lunatic. You see, Vijaya cannot assess the victim and the perpetrator in any given situation because she sees the world through a biased perspective. She believes that leftists are good and conservatives are bad. And so if a conservative does something, well, there must be some kind of evil in their heart. When a leftist does it, well, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. They're a leftist. They must be a good person. But banning Milo for this gets even less rational when you consider she's claiming that these tweets were an incitement of harassment. How is this an incitement of harassment? I mean, I guess if she thinks that this is incitement, it kind of makes sense that she's banned Trump from Twitter too. I mean, at least she's consistently crazy, but this is very clearly not incitement of harassment. I mean, how is it? He's posting something that he believes that she posted, that Leslie Jones posted, something that he thinks is outrageous, something that he thinks is bad. Again, people post stuff like that every day about Donald Trump. Still, now that he's out of office, people are still posting these lies about him. Are each of these instances an incitement of harassment? I mean, the lie is precisely the same. Milo was pointing out through these tweets that Leslie Jones is a racist. Now, these tweets may have been phony, but she probably is a racist, and Milo genuinely believed that, and I believe that. So it's not really a lie at all. But in the same way, all the lies about Donald Trump having never condemned white supremacy or having called all Mexicans rapists, these are lies that essentially say Trump is a racist. So if indicating that you believe somebody's a racist is an incitement to harassment, every Trump hater on Twitter should be banned. But of course, this doesn't happen. Let's listen to Vijaya lie some more.
No, I'm just going to be honest. When I'm listening to those or listening to you read those tweets out, they don't sound that bad. And they certainly don't sound as bad as calling for the death of a child who's wearing a MAGA hat and throw him into a wood chipper. The fact that that guy's still out there tweeting and yet Milo's not. Milo's the whole thing stemmed from, other than the BuzzFeed thing, stemmed from his legitimate criticism of a film. And he's a satirist. He was mocking this film.
The doxing incident wasn't related to the film. The
doxing incident,
yeah.
Well,
right.
So Joe Rogan makes precisely the right point here. He contrasts this woman's treatment of Milo, who is a satirist. He's a provocative comedian with a conservative political perspective. He contrasts that with her treatment of leftists who post things that actually violate her idiotic terms of service. And he points out that she has a total double standard. She's massively biased, and she's using her so-called rules as a weapon. And her response is that, quote, well, the doxing thing was legitimate, end quote. Okay, so now even if the doxing thing was legitimate, which it wasn't, that's only one thing. You're just dismissing being totally unfair to somebody because of their political affiliation, because you think you were right in 1 out of 3 strikes that you're claiming justify your banning of Milo. But your doxing point isn't even legitimate either. I've already pointed out how that was total bullshit. And Tim Pool has already pointed out many other instances in which you haven't actually enforced the rule. So there is a double standard there as well. The doxing rule is also just a political weapon. Nothing that this woman says is valid. Everything she says in this entire interview is a lie. All right, let's listen to some more lying.
The concern is that this is always leaning towards the left.
Oh, it absolutely is, and I'm not even getting started.
Yeah.
I can understand why you feel that way. I don't think that's true. I think we look at each individual instance of violations of our rules and try to make the best case that we can.
I don't think that's true. Do you know what that means? That means she knows it's true. Imagine you're being interviewed on a YouTube channel, right? And somebody during the interview accuses you of being a murderer. You're not going to say, I don't think that's true. No, you're going to say, what the hell are you talking about? That's total bullshit. You're a liar. That's an unbelievable thing to say. You know you're lying, and you're a piece of human garbage for accusing me of that. That's how you're going to react, because being accused of a heinous thing like that, well, it deserves a serious rebuke. But she doesn't provide a serious rebuke. She says, I don't think that's true. So yeah, not only is she clearly lying, she's very badly lying.
I do think we've failed in a couple of ways, and I want to admit that.
Okay.
Number one, we haven't done enough education about what our rules are.
Oh yeah, that's where you failed. Educating people. The only thing that people aren't educated on is exactly how bigoted, vicious, and dictatorial you are. But look, she knows this isn't true. And here's why she's saying this. Joe Rogan and Tim Pool have pivoted the conversation in a way that's very tricky for her. This is a bad place for her to be in terms of topics because Twitter is biased against conservatives, and she knows that it is. So how does she navigate this? She'll fess up to a shortcoming that doesn't actually exist, so she doesn't make the company look bad. We've tried to educate people, but we just haven't educated people enough. Well, that's a nice sidestep, lady. You just dismissed their concerns, and you moved the conversation in a direction that makes Twitter look amazing. Twitter wants to educate people, and our only sin is not educating people enough. That's like saying, my biggest flaw is that, I don't know, sometimes I think maybe I'm too awesome. But then I think, maybe not enough people are getting exposed to my awesomeness. I'm sorry, world. I'm sorry that not enough people are being exposed to just how awesome I am. Yeah, so anyway, this is a total misdirect. Vijaya is using one of the fundamentals of magic, misdirection. And magic, by the way, is just professional deception. In other words, she's lying. Again. Let's listen to some more lies.
The other thing we have to do to address these allegations that we're doing this from a biased perspective is to be really clear about what types of behavior are caught by our rules and what types are not, and to be transparent within the product. So when a particular tweet is found to be in violation of our rules, being very, very clear, like this tweet was found to be in violation of this particular rule. And that's all work that we're doing.
To be transparent? Whoa, 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 whoa. Did you guys all catch that? Transparent. That is hilarious. So she's going to be transparent about why people are censored, suspended, and banned. Well, that would be a massive shift from the current situation. Of all the platforms, I do think Twitter is more transparent than YouTube or Facebook, which are, in my mind, even worse about censorship than Twitter. To her credit, and to Jack's credit, they at least came onto Joe Rogan's show here. But all she's doing on this show is lying. So I'm guessing that this was a calculated decision made because they believe that they could lie to Joe Rogan effectively enough to make Twitter look good and to reduce the criticism that they're obviously biased. So I'm not sure if Twitter actually is better about transparency. I think that they're using the illusion of transparency as a tool that will facilitate their bigotry and that will silence their critics. They're not actually any different than YouTube or Facebook. They've just got a different strategy, but their motivations and their intentions are the same.
So one really important thing that needs to be stated is that Twitter, by definition, is a biased platform in favor of the left, period. It's not a question. I understand you might have your own interpretation, but it's very simple. Conservatives do not agree with you on the definition of misgendering. If you have a rule in place that specifically adheres to the left ideology, you, by default, are enforcing rules from a biased perspective.
Well, Tim, there are a lot of people on the left who don't agree with how we're doing our job either.
For sure.
And those people think that we don't take enough action on abuse and harassment, and we let far too much behavior go. And they think
but that's
Twitter...
a radical example, though. I mean, what he's talking about, in terms of generalities, in general, things lean far more left. Would you agree to that?
I don't know what that means.
But in this particular case, it's how the speech is being used. This is a new vector of attack that people have felt that I don't want to be on this platform anymore because I'm being harassed and abused and I need to get the hell out.
Well, people harass and abuse me all day and night. You don't do anything about that.
Wow. Jack Dorsey was just, I believe the term is owned. Oh, yes, he was just owned. So Jack Dorsey fell into a simple trap here. Nobody set the trap for him, but Tim realized the trap had been set and that Jack was squarely in it. And he very simply took Jack out using a very simple example. The trap is this. Jack says our biased censorship is justified because people say they're victims. Well, that's always a failing argument because unless those two things are true, there will always be examples of cases in which you didn't protect victims. And I'm talking about real victims, not just people pretending. And so Tim was able to immediately destroy Jack here because he just brings up Twitter's negligence around his own victimization on Twitter. And the victimization of Tim Pool has been far more severe than simply calling a trans person by the wrong pronoun. And notice that when Jack hears Tim's counterpoint, which is totally legitimate, Jack is silenced. He can't respond. He has nothing to say.
People harass and abuse me all day and night. You don't do anything about that.
The reason Jack and his little minion, Vijaya, the reason that they will always fall into this trap is because they just can't admit that Twitter is biased. And it's so stupid. Of course you're biased. And if you don't think Twitter is biased, consider this. Conservatives are all calling for less censorship. Leftists are all calling for more censorship.
There are a lot of people on the left who don't agree with how we're doing our job either.
For sure.
And those people think that we don't take enough action on abuse and harassment.
That alone proves you're biased. Because if leftists felt that leftists were being unjustly censored, leftists would be calling for less censorship. And if conservatives were being treated fairly, they wouldn't be complaining. And you could say, yes, there is bias, but it's okay because the right has more bad people doing more bad things, and so that's why there is bias against conservatives. That is a much better position, because then we'd have to start talking about what makes a person's political views good and what makes a person's political views bad. But we can't even get to that point because you won't admit that you're biased. And you know you are. Jack Dorsey once admitted in an interview that, quote, "We have a lot of conservative-leaning folks here at the company as well. And to be honest, they don't feel safe to express their opinions at the company. They do feel silenced by just the general swirl of what they perceive to be the broader percentage of leanings within the company, and I don't think that's fair or right. You don't think that's fair or right. Well, that's awesome, Jack. But do you really lament that? Because if you do, you can change it. You're the CEO. And if you can't change that, well, how do you think your inability to moderate the hostile leftist temperament in your office translates to the site? It certainly isn't going to push the site to be more neutral or unbiased. The problem is perspective. This girl, Vijaya, she thinks that she's in the middle here. She thinks that she's the fair-minded person in the center and that there are crazy leftists pulling her one way and there's crazy people on the right who are pulling her the other way. But she's not in the center. She's on the left. Certainly, the people who are pulling her more left are going to be crazy people. They're the people that are so left that even ordinary leftists are going to think, dang, that person's crazy. But to Vijaya, reasonable people on the right are also going to seem crazy because she thinks she's in the center. And her perspective blinds her to the truth. She has no ability to perceive herself objectively from the outside. If Jack Dorsey wanted to actually be fair in how he censors people on Twitter and genuinely wanted to keep people safe from targeted harassment or harm or whatever they're pretending to want to protect people from, then he would want to hire two Vijayas. He would have this Vijaya, left-wing Vijaya, and then he would have a second Vijaya, a conservative Vijaya. He would hire someone like me, and I would do that job. Jack Dorsey, I will work for you. If you genuinely want to be fair and just and unbiased and keep people from harm through your site, instead of having Vijaya dictate unilaterally without any checks or balances, instead have Vijaya and Mr. Reagan do it. No one can be censored or suspended or banned without having both of us agree to it. And I promise not to be just a biased conservative. If I think a conservative is genuinely hurting someone, I'll agree to ban them. And of course, it doesn't have to be me. I love my job. I definitely don't need to be working a 9 to 5 at Twitter, but I will do it, absolutely. And there are many like me who would do it, fair-minded conservatives who want to help you fix your company. But we know that's never going to happen, don't we? Because protecting people from targeted attacks really isn't the point of your policies. The policies are there to justify your targeted attacks against conservatives. But maybe I'm wrong, Jack, and if so, prove it to me. Please, I would love it. Prove me wrong, hire me, and bring balance to your biased social media platform. Well, that's it for me, and remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just that they know so much that is not so. Good night.
The goal for all of us should be that one day things will be done neither because of nor in spite of any of the differences between us, ethnic differences or racial differences, whatever they may be, that we will have total equal opportunity for all people. And I would do everything I could in my power to bring that about.